Have you ever wondered how a woman might change the dynamics of a criminal empire if she were the mastermind? In a world where crime and power are often associated with masculinity, it's intriguing, isn't it? To imagine a woman, not as a side character or a helpless victim, but as the mastermind pulling the strings. Today we're going to introduce you to such a woman, a femme fatale if you will, who towered over a criminal empire with her intelligence and strategic prowess. Her story begins not in the shadowy corners of a crime-ridden city, but in the mundane reality of an ordinary life. Born into a middle-class family, she was a precocious child, always asking questions, always curious about the world around her. But this seemingly innocuous curiosity would soon take a darker turn. The influences that pushed her towards a life of crime were not dramatic or extraordinary. There were no tragic deaths, no violent circumstances. Instead, her path was paved by the allure of power, the thrill of outwitting others, and the desire to escape the confines of an ordinary life. Her teachers noticed her intellect early on. She was always ahead of her classmates, solving problems faster, understanding concepts quicker. But they also noticed something else, a certain disregard for rules, a tendency to bend them to suit her needs. It was this combination of intellect and audacity that would later shape her into a formidable mastermind. Her journey was not without obstacles. Being a woman in a man's world, she faced skepticism and underestimation at every turn. But she used these to her advantage, subtly manipulating perceptions and controlling situations from the shadows. Her gender, which many assumed would be her weakness, became her greatest weapon. As she grew older, her ambitions grew bolder. She wanted more than a life of mediocrity. She craved power, control, a life on her own terms, and she was ready to do whatever it took to get there. From a young age, our femme fatale demonstrated a keen intellect and a willingness to bend the rules to get what she wanted. Climbing the ranks in a criminal empire is not an easy task. It requires cunning, ruthlessness, and the ability to manipulate. For our femme fatale, these traits were not just inherent, but they were honed to perfection. Her intelligence was her most formidable weapon. She was quick to understand the inner workings of the empire, the power dynamics, and the vulnerabilities of her rivals. She could spot an opportunity from a mile away and seize it before anyone else. She played her cards close to her chest, revealing just enough to keep her allies intrigued and her enemies guessing. Her strategic prowess was unmatched, and she used it to make key decisions that would shape her path to power. She knew when to strike, when to hold back, and when to make a grand spectacle. She was a master of manipulation, using her charm and wit to sway those around her. She knew exactly what to say and when to say it, turning potential enemies into allies. She understood that alliances were crucial in this world, especially those formed out of mutual benefit and respect. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. She had rivals, many who underestimated her because of her gender. They saw her as a pretty face rather than a formidable adversary. But she used this to her advantage, playing the part of the unsuspecting damsel while plotting their downfall. She outsmarted them at every turn. She was always one step ahead, predicting their moves and countering them with her own. She was ruthless when she needed to be, eliminating those who stood in her way. But she was never cruel for the sake of cruelty. Each act, each decision, was calculated and purposeful. In this world of chaos and crime, she was a beacon of poise and intelligence. She didn't just survive, she thrived. She didn't just play the game, she changed the rules. She was a force to be reckoned with, a mastermind in a world where few expected her to succeed. With each calculated move, she proved that she was not to be underestimated. Now at the helm of her criminal empire, our femme fatale faced new challenges. With power comes great responsibility, and for our femme fatale, that responsibility was maintaining her hard-earned dominance. She wasn't just a pretty face, she was a mastermind, a strategist, and a leader. But how did she manage to keep her empire from crumbling? The answer is simple: through intelligence and strategic prowess. The authorities were always a step behind her, their traps and snares easily sidestepped. She was a chameleon, blending into the background when necessary, standing out when it served her. She was always one step ahead, her actions planned meticulously, her strategies expertly crafted. She was the puppet master, the authorities her unwitting puppets. But her adversaries weren't limited to the authorities. Rival gangs were a constant threat, each one eager to dethrone her and take over her empire. Yet time and again they found themselves outplayed. Our femme fatale was not one to be underestimated. She knew her enemies better than they knew themselves, using their weaknesses against them, turning their strengths into liabilities. She played them like a fiddle, keeping them at bay, ensuring her reign remained unchallenged. Managing a criminal empire is no easy task. It requires cunning, determination, and a certain ruthlessness. Our femme fatale had these in spades. She ruled with an iron fist. Her orders followed without question. Yet, she was not a tyrant. She understood the importance of loyalty, of respect. Her subordinates followed her not out of fear, but out of admiration, out of loyalty. She was more than a boss. She was a leader, a mentor, a figurehead. Her reign was not without its challenges, its trials. There were close calls, moments of doubt, instances where everything she had worked for seemed on the brink of collapse. But she weathered these storms, her determination never wavering, her resolve never breaking. Her reign was a testament to her intelligence, her strategic mind, and her unwavering determination. All empires eventually fall, and our femme fatales was no exception. It was a blend of hubris, betrayal, and a series of unforced errors that led to her eventual downfall. In her pinnacle of power, she began to overestimate her abilities, feeling invincible. She started taking unnecessary risks, believing that her intelligence and strategic prowess could overcome any obstacle. She dared to challenge the most formidable gangs, not out of strategic necessity, but to assert dominance. This hubris, this pride, was her first mistake, and it set the stage for her downfall. As she pushed her empire to its limits, cracks began to appear within her ranks. She had always been a master manipulator, keeping her subordinates in check through a mix of fear and respect. But as she grew more reckless, the balance began to waver. Fear turned into resentment, and respect into defiance. Among her closest allies, whispers of betrayal started to circulate. The loyalty she thought she commanded was dissipating, and she was too blinded by her own pride to see it. The greatest blow, however, came from an unexpected corner. One of her most trusted lieutenants, a man she had groomed and trusted implicitly, turned out to be her Judas. He was the one who finally tipped off the authorities, providing them with enough evidence to bring her empire crumbling down. Betrayed by her own, our femme fatale was left defenseless and vulnerable. The subsequent raid by the authorities was swift and ruthless. Her empire, once a symbol of her power and cunning, was reduced to ashes within hours. She was captured, her reign over, and her empire in ruins. In the end, even the most cunning mastermind couldn't outsmart fate. She was a femme fatale, a mastermind, a queen in her own right. But even queens fall, and the higher they climb, the harder they fall. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the inevitable downfall that awaits those who let their pride cloud their judgment. It's a story of power, betrayal, and the eventual fall from grace. Despite her downfall, the legacy of our femme fatale lives on. Her impact on the criminal world was monumental, her reign a seismic shift in the tectonic plates of the underworld. She was no mere player in the game of power, she was the game itself. Her strategic prowess and intelligence didn't just earn her a seat at the table, they redefined the table altogether. This femme fatale was not just a criminal mastermind, she was a catalyst for change. She disrupted the status quo, shattered glass ceilings, and challenged traditional norms. She subverted the typical narrative and proved that a woman could lead with as much cunning, ruthlessness, and strategic acumen as any man. Her reign was not without controversy, of course. Critics argued that her actions only served to reinforce harmful stereotypes of women as manipulative and deceitful. Supporters, however, saw her as a symbol of female empowerment, a testament to the fact that women are just as capable of leading, strategizing, and outsmarting their opponents. Her influence extended beyond the confines of her own empire. Rival gangs began to reassess their own strategies, their own leadership. They were forced to acknowledge and adapt to the new reality she had created. Authorities too had to adjust their tactics, their approach. They had to recognize that criminal masterminds were no longer exclusively male. The femme fatale's legacy is a complex one, tinged with shades of gray. She was a criminal, yes, but she was also a pioneer, a trailblazer. She pushed boundaries, challenged conventions, and changed the landscape of the criminal world. Her story serves as a reminder that power is not the exclusive domain of men, that women are just as capable of cunning, strategy, and leadership. It's a reminder that traditional gender roles can be challenged, that stereotypes can be shattered, that norms can be subverted. Though her empire crumbled, her story remains a powerful testament to the potential of a female mastermind in a world dominated by men.